just take a look at how we might want to take a tape lift. We mentioned a little bit about it earlier about not being heavy-handed with the tapes. Again, you're going to want to record your information here. It's not a bad idea to record your information on these devices too, because in the lab, it's always a good idea to label the lid and the base, so if the two get separated, they can always go back together. But as you label it, you want to peel this off, and you want to put it somewhere where you're going to be able to get it again. Now, I don't recommend that you carry it with you while you're sampling the surface, because it's going to get contaminated. So you want to place it in your pack like this, and this is meant to bend so that you can get to a surface and be able to pick it off. So basically you just want to bend it, lightly touch it like that, pull it up, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now, one of the problems that the labs will have, if you take this and you bend it too much, like this, you can see it has a memory. And that's, when you put it on the microscope, it's a lot harder to try to get the plane of focus right, and they slip between the holders on the microscope stage. So there's no reason to put a lot of bend in it.
And to form the plastic.
And to form the plastic.
Yeah.
Just very easily touch it, go back. Now, make sure that your hands have not contaminated anything. Put the cover back on and send it away. Very easy to do. If you're going to sample with tape like this, you want to get a lead tape so that, and this tape is absolutely sterile. You want to pull about an inch off, bend it between your fingers like this, and all you're going to do is lightly touch it like that, pull it up, put it on your slide, and send it away.
We're in a commercial setting, and we've been asked to do a limited mold inspection, which includes a non-invasive visual examination of the area of concern that's been specified and defined by the inspector and the client. And what we have here is a bathroom and a sink and an area of concern. There's a bit of a drip, or there was a drip or a leak coming from the sink fixture itself, and there's some apparent mold growth below, so I'm going to take so that's my visual examination of an area of concern, and I can use my HomeGauge software to identify in my report my area of concern. It's underneath the sink, and I'm going to take some sampling, including an air sample, because I want to know if the mold spores are in the air, and which may affect the health of a person by breathing those mold spores in. I also want to take a surface sample because I see apparent mold growth, and when you see apparent mold growth, take a surface sample just to confirm that what you see is actually mold. So let's take a surface sample. I'm going to take a surface sample using BioTape. It's very easy to use, has a barcode, which is really nice, has an expiration date, tells you when you should not use this sampling device anymore. They have a little piece of plastic you peel off and you retain it, and those two lines are shows where you take that surface sampling. And I'm going to take the surface sampling down below the sink. I'm going to bend that piece of plastic, not too much, because if you warp it, the laboratory can't read the tape. And I'm going to just do a gentle surface sampling, and it only takes a moment. Surface samples are great. It's an affordable way to take, that's good trace, I see. It's an affordable way to take a lot of sampling. Perfect. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to record in my chain of custody the ID number, the date, the location, and also in a workbook that you may use. This is actually my workbook, my Pocket PC, using my software. Now, what about personal protection?
when taking all these different samples. Air samples, you're not touching any mold, so you're not causing problems. If you're doing a tape sample, like you just demonstrated, you're touching the apparent visible mold growth, and maybe you're disturbing the area. We were talking about, wearing gloves or not wearing gloves, or being careful what you touch with the air sampling devices. Should you wear latex gloves on every mold sample, no matter what you're doing? Especially if it's a surface sampling, respirator, full face.
Well, those are good questions. There's no one single answer. Everybody has their own thresholds for what they tolerate. One of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you protect yourself, even more so than the occupants in the home, because you're going to be exposed to mold all the time. You're going to be in attics, crawl spaces, rooms where they can be quite moldy. So you don't want to sensitize yourself. So whether or not you use a respirator or not is kind of up to you. But there is a device called an N95 mask. You can buy them at Home Depot. They're very effective in keeping spores out of your mouth. They're a disposable white face mask, and that's not a bad idea.
And a flexible thing.
Yes.
Around you. Yeah.
Now, whether or not you should use gloves, it's always a lot more difficult to work with samples when you handle gloves. I know that the IESO standards say that you should wear gloves when you use a swab. That's their standard.
Well, when I go, I know to Kenton right there, he wears a full face mask, respirator, to go into every crawl space.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
that's a
it's
confined
really a
space.
personal thing. Yep.
That's a confined space. You're in there all the time, and you're not scaring the occupants. But you don't want to show up in a moon suit, full face respirator, and say, "I'm here to take your mold sample." The next thing we want to talk about are allergen samples. Allergen sampling takes a different chain of custody, quite different. There's no flow rate and time, but there are places where you take the sample and the sample number. These don't come with serial numbers.
And no flow rate and time.
No flow rate and time.
You could do a sampling. We're doing this is a carpet sampling.
This is a carpet sample, fabric sample, hardwood floor sample, corner sample. Doesn't matter. And I'll show you why. Because in here is a vial that's screened. And of course the screen, you can squeeze it, and you want to fill this up as much as you can. What we want is about a tablespoon of a teaspoon rather of dust, because we want to get enough allergen in order to run our test. And so if you fill this up, you'll probably have enough. And so flow rate and time don't matter.
But that matters. That's your goal, filling that up.
That's our goal. And it is possible for you to take it apart, look at it, to make sure that how much you're filling it up, put it back together. So your vacuum hose would go here, and you simply vacuum it up until it's full, replace the plugs, and then always a good idea.
There's no calibrations here.
There's no calibrations here whatsoever.
You don't calibrate your sweeper.
You don't calibrate your sweeper.
Okay.
Important to put this in some kind of a bag, that usually the bag it came with. Label the bag so it corresponds with the chain of custody. And then what to do with this sampling. Once you've taken a sample, if you're not going to send it in that day, you should refrigerate it or freeze it.
Why?
Because if you keep this around, it's got all the dust, all the skin cells, fungi, as well as the mites. And the mites will continue to reproduce and grow, and so it may amplify the number of allergens in here beyond which it was on the original surface. So if you're not going to send these directly in, make sure you refrigerate them or freeze them so that the allergen, the dust mite allergen, doesn't amplify.
That kind of slows them down.
It'll stop them. That's right. And you can choose what allergen type that you want to have tested.
see dust mite, fungal package, dust mite, cockroach, cat, dog. There's a lot of concerns about cat.
There are a lot of concerns about cat. Unlike mold, some of these allergens have actual threshold limits. So those are important. Allergens are becoming more and more important for people because they're in the fact that they're becoming aware of them, and people are starting to test their homes, especially when they buy new homes. They're going in to test for allergens to see if the family had a rodent problem, a cockroach problem, if they have amplified dust mites, or if they have cats or had cats. So that's the way to test for that.
And why the carpet? What's so special about the carpet?
Well, carpet does one thing. The carpet's designed to do one thing: capture everything that hits it, and everything eventually hits the ground. Mold, fibers, allergens. And so a carpet can give you a history of what's happened in the house. And so carpets are a really good reservoir. They harbor all kinds of things. In fact, it's often been said that 1 square foot of carpet extrapolated out to a football field would be on the EPA Superfund site. It's so contaminated. But they do that very well. That they're designed to capture contaminants and hide dust.
And where does a mold inspector generally take these samples on the location of the carpet, let's say in the living room?
You want to make sure that you're away from an entranceway that gets a lot of traffic. You want to go someplace that doesn't get a lot of traffic, doesn't get cleaned a lot, and take that sample there. You can also combine samples. You can go all over the room and do a composite sample, because if your idea is that I want to see if you have cat allergens, you might want to go around to a lot of places trying to fill up your cassette, because the dog or the cat might prefer a certain place in the room from the previous owners, and you wouldn't know about it.
I shouldn't be moving furniture.
No, as a general rule, home inspectors don't move anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not near the entry or a high traffic area, because you're bringing things. There's a likelihood that something's coming in on someone's feet right into the carpet there.
Right. You would expect to see higher, for instance, mold allergens there, because you're bringing it in from outside.
From outside.
So someplace where you're not going to see that.
And like you said before, unlike mold, there are threshold limits. There's clear, distinct lines drawn for a lot of these, all of these.
No, for only a few of them.
Only a few of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, again, setting expectations with your client, asking them what do they want to know, and figuring out what allergens can answer that question, and then having those threshold limits, you can connect everything in a nice straight line that's understandable and clear for your client.
That's correct. Mostly what you're going to get from an allergen is you're going to get a test. You're going to get, do you have a low, a significant, or likely exposure to the allergen itself. So even though some of these don't have threshold limits, you'll still see if they're low, if they have a significant amount, or if you're likely to be exposed if you have a lot. And that can tell you something.
Oh.
There are some important things to remember about using a pump. Number one is that I recommend that you use a calibration log, where you record the day, perhaps the time, and the flow rate of when you're going to use the pump, and the fact that you calibrated it. That's important because you want to keep a record of when you use the pump and validate that it was running properly at the time of the samples. I think it's important. Some people calibrate it before and after samples, but probably once a day is good enough. And you want to keep it in a bound book so you can keep it as a reference. Then when you use your pump, it's pre-calibrated, and you got a rotometer here, and when you turn it on, you want to make sure it comes to the proper flow rate each time. For instance, if you're going to use a Micro 5 or a Z5, you're going to want to use 5 liters a minute. If you're going to use an Aerocell, you're going to use 15 liters a minute. So it's very, very important. Now this one's been pre-calibrated to 15 liters a minute, so when I turn it on, the bead ought to come right to the 15 liters a minute, and we'll let it settle down. We won't want to touch this rotometer knob at any time. And there you can see it's right on. And then, of course, we can put our sampler on. We want to remove the tape off the inlet and the exit port. Put it into your cassette. And as long as this isn't pointing directly up, that's probably a bad idea, but sideways or slightly down is perfectly fine. If you've got so much debris that you're worried about that it could fall in to the cassette, you probably shouldn't be sampling at that time. So it's not too critical. What is critical is the flow rate and then, of course, the time. So you want to be pretty precise about the time, when you turn it on and when you turn it off. So if you're going to use, for instance, an aerosol that has a longer sampling time of 10 minutes, then you're going to want to make sure you come back or even watch it. Because you want to make sure that this rotometer is not going to vary. You don't want it fluctuating up and down for whatever reason. So
You should stay in the same room and maybe looking at the rotometer as it's going, walking around and doing other things and coming back in about 9.5 minutes wouldn't be a good idea.
well, if you're sure that it's going to work properly, but it's better to just watch it. It's better because then you don't have a question about it. So 10 minutes can seem like a long time watching a pump draw air, but it's probably worth it.
And there are timers that you can buy to start and stop exactly for 10 minutes or whatever time you want.
There are inline timers. I recommend them, that you get them. That way you know for sure, and that way you could leave it unattended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right, Dr. Shane, you've shown us how to take a sample. Now, how about a reference sample or a comparison sample? How do you do that?
A reference or comparison samples are very important because it gives you a baseline of what a normal air sample will look like. And if you don't have the ability to take an outdoor sample, for instance, in the winter, absolute snow cover or complete rain out, washout conditions, then you'll have to pick another, what we call non-affected room. Now that can be a hard place to pick. So, and there's no way to divine that without actually taking a sample, but you want to get away furthest away from the affected room if you know it. Now, some people will say that a garage sample is an outdoor reference sample. A garage sample is not an outdoor reference sample. A garage sample is a garage sample. And so it is a room in the house. So even though it's an attached garage, it is a garage sample. And garages, in my experience, have shown to have lots and lots of fungi and lots of different kinds of fungi. So don't expect a garage sample to be an outdoor sample. So if you have all things being equal, if you want to take an outdoor sample, as we said earlier, that you want to take, I think, a sample in the outside before you go inside and do your work. Because if you're there for an hour or two, weather conditions change, and then you don't have an ability to take a non-biased outdoor sample. A couple of things about taking an outdoor sample. And I prefer to take a front yard and a backyard sample if it's a residential. Now, a lot of people won't want to pay for that, so you have to decide. But because you can well imagine that some people's houses, most people's houses, face the street, and they have a regular backyard, perhaps a garden. So those are two completely different environments. One is going to have a lot of particulates and a different kind of spore load, potentially, than a backyard. And it's also important to take it away from any material that's been taken from the inside outside. Any moldy material, any carpets that they've taken outside, because what we see when that happens is you've got these high numbers of water indicating spores outside, and it's not a real reference sample. But the key about taking an outdoor sample, with all things being equal, you want to take it normally, and you want to make sure that if there's any kind of a directional factor to the wind, you want to sample into the wind for the same reasons about the lee side of the building. If you take it, if this is the inlet port here, and you take it and the wind's coming this way, it's going to deselect against certain spores and select against force other spores. So you're completely biasing your sample. So you want to put it into the wind and take the sample if there's any kind of a wind at all. And you want to take it away from the building enough so that you're sure you're not getting an influence from the building itself. And that's really important to remember.
And it's a judgment call. 5, 10 feet. It has been written down or studied?
It has not been written down or studied very well, and so it's a judgment call. Every house is different. You're just going to have to decide.
So you have to pay attention, the inspector has to pay attention to the placement of the sampling equipment, front yard, backyard situations, and wind direction, and making sure that the sampling device is right into the wind, and also weather conditions, temperature.
Temperature is important only in the extreme when it's very, very cold. And as I say, keep it in your front pocket or in a heated part of the building or in the car before you take it, and you should be okay.
Okay, what about snow covering? Partial covering, dusting, there's a lot of terms that are used for snow. But in the east, when you get a snow load, it's usually very wet, maybe icy. When you see an inch of snow, then that's definitely a covering. Maybe out west in other parts of the country, southern, it could be just a dusting of snow. Where do you recommend? Where do you draw the line? Again, it's subjective.
It is subjective, and those are the kind of things you want to note on the COC. If you have complete snow cover or if it's snowing at the time, that helps us a lot.
Yeah.
And it may help with the interpretation, it may not, but in all cases it's helpful to know the conditions under which you take a sample.
Okay.
The other thing about taking a sample is that you will want to send in a blank sample, a field blank. A blank that's not, a cassette that is not opened. And label it as you normally would.
Why would you do that?
Well, you want to, for two reasons. One, you want to see that your cassettes are not contaminated. And two, you want to make sure that the lab knows what a blank looks like. You want to make sure that they're doing their job.
Do you tell them this is a blank, or is it blind?
Some people tell them it's a blank, but other people do not. A blind blank is a perfectly acceptable thing to put in. You can make up a location, send it in, keep your notes that it's a blank, and it should come back blank.
So what about elevation and comparison samples? The elevation of the room in which the indoor sample is being taken, and something on the outside, the sampler on the outside. Should they be, do you try to eyeball it, see where the elevation is, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter within reason. The idea is that you want to take samples at breathing zone. So it doesn't make any sense to take a sample in the house where you're standing at this level and then go on the roof and take a sample, because that's not the air that you're breathing. It may mix with the air that you're going to breathe, but it's not the air that you're breathing. Likewise, if you take a sample on the 10th floor in the building, you want to take a 10th floor outdoor sample, because that's the air that they're going to be compared with. Now, there is some debate about that, but that's normally what you want to do. You want to compare apples to apples. So you don't want to take one at the ground floor outside and then on the 3rd story or the 5th story inside. Those are two completely different kinds of samples.
Okay.
Very important. Then the other thing to think about is debris load. When you take a sample, sometimes you're going to know what the debris load is of the environment, but many times you're not. So you're going to have to adjust the time that you sample. So ordinarily, for instance, this aerosol is meant for 15 liters a minute for 10 minutes in a normal, calm environment. If it's very dusty, you may want to sample for 5 minutes. You don't want to change the flow rate, but you can change the time. And it reduces the 15 liters a minute for 5 minutes on the outside, because outside samples are often very dirty. And I recommend that.
And how does an inspector know how much volume or time for each sampling device that they have?
Good point. Each manufacturer has stated reference material in the package of what their cassettes are rated for.
So they're not making it up?
They're not making it up. They've done some research and followed the research. To take a tape lift sample, you want a clear adhesive tape, single-sided, not frosted ever. It makes it very difficult for the lab to look through a frosted glass. And a clean glass microscope slide. They come in these nice mailers that are very sturdy. And what you want to do is you will want to prepare your slide and put it on a clean surface. I always like to pull a lead tag end out. Take about an inch of tape holding it only on the edges. Bend it back like this, because you don't want to use a lot of pressure on a surface when you take a tape lift, because you're looking at microscopic particles. So if you see it, you've probably got too much on it. So what you want to do is just lightly touch it to a surface and let the tape bow and the adhesive pick up the tape, or pick up the fungus, and then you want to lay it on your slide. Now, notice how I'm laying that on there. I'm not burnishing it down with my finger. I just want to lay it on there so that it adheres. Because the lab later will pick this back up and put mounting medium under there, or stain if they wish, and then analyze it. So if you burnish it down, it's going to break all the structures, and it'll be difficult sometimes to associate the spores with the structures. So no pressure is needed at all.
I've seen inspectors actually push the thumb down. You know, they're on the wall, put it up there, and take it off.
Yeah. Not a good idea, because if you do that, let's just take this off and do that. If you do that, you can imagine you're going to pull up a lot of dirt, you're going to pull up wallboard,
Substrate,
and substrate that you don't want, that obscure the spores, and most of all, you don't want to go up to Mrs. Jones' wall paper and do that and pull the wallpaper off. Now you've got a bigger problem. If you just bend that tape like that and just touch it to any surface, you're not going to pull off the wallboard, the wallpaper, anything that you don't want to see.
And mold, this is a surface growth phenomenon. It's on the surface. We're not looking for, we're not digging into bread and getting that sample. This is a surface sampling when you press on something like that.
That's correct. Mold is mostly a surface phenomenon. It's not a building material, so what you're going to want to see is what's on the surface. And they stick up from the surface. Some of them are slimy and they're harder to get, but you don't need to burnish it down. Remember, just a little bit is a lot. And then, of course, you'll want to take and put your slide in this mailer, close it, label it appropriately, and send it off. It's an easy way to take a sample. I know that I'm a big fan of that sampling technique, and others are too. If we look at another kind of sampler that uses a glass slide, it's the Cyclex. And this is a device that was made for forever use before these other kinds of things came along, when more disposable cassettes came along. What this is a slide that has a pre-adhesive application. And it's also got a barcode, a unique barcode, so that you can track the sample. And you want to make sure you put it in the sampling device adhesive side up. And the way to do that is just to take your baby finger and just touch the edge, and you can see that there's no adhesive there. So I want to turn it over and just touch the edge, just enough to verify that you've got it adhesive side up, because there's the slit that you want to have next to the adhesive. We often get samples like this where they don't check it, they're upside down, and it's very frustrating for the client because they have to repeat the sample and it costs money. And there's a little guide that you put it in there so it fits perfectly right in the middle. This also has a guide. 2 posts go to these 2 posts, and they clamp together. You hook it to your pump. You draw it for the appropriate time, 15 and 10, much like the Cyclex D. And when it's done, merely remove it, take it out. And if you want to verify a trace is there, or if the pump worked, you just have to hold it to the light, and you will see a tiny horizontal trace there. And that's a verification that the pump worked, that you got sample. What you don't want to see is a big dark line. You'll want to retake it if you do, with a lower time. Put it in your box, label it appropriately, and send it in. Very easy. Glass slides are very cheap. These mailers are very sturdy. There are other kind of samplers now in the market, and this is a particular one that has been a good innovation. It's again a slit-like sampler, but the innovation is, if you can see that, these slides are barcoded. So each slide is uniquely identified with this sample. It's got a really nice large space to write on.
That's right.
One of the problems with the round device is that there isn't a place to write, and it's often very obscure by the time the lab gets it, after it's been in pockets and mailed, what really the cassette says. And to verify that it's on the chain of custody is often difficult. But here's a nice large area to write on. And what I like, especially as I mentioned, that unique barcode. And we have found that you can read these barcodes in this box without taking them out. So you can put it up to your barcode reader, get it uniquely identified, look on the chain of custody, verify that this is indeed the sample that corresponds to the chain of custody, and it just saves a lot of time. It also, of course, makes it so that the lab, when they open this up, all labs, when they open up cassettes, and if we can get this open, have to relabel the slide. With the barcode, you don't have to relabel the slide, so it saves a step. These other samplers have come on the market since the Aerocell, and they have their own merits. And each of these have good data to support their impaction efficiencies. So if you look at the Positrack Allergenco D that has the barcode, one of the good things about this is that when they open it up, that slide is already pre-labeled for you. All it needs is mounting medium, a cover slip, and you're ready to go. And you can track it any place in the lab at receiving, at preparation, and at an analysis, and uniquely identified. It's a good advancement. I really quite like that. So those are the sampler types. There's a lot to choose from. People have their favorites. They're all pretty good, but each one of them will have a particular thing that will appeal to a home inspector, and you should quiz the lab what they like best, how they analyze them. That's important. You want to make sure that the lab does an adequate job with analyzing samples, and you also want to talk to the manufacturer of these devices to make sure that they know what they're saying and that you feel comfortable with that.
Great. Let's take a look at a sampling device here. It's to collect bioaerosols and aeroallergens for quantitative analysis of mold spores, pollen, skin fragments, insects, combustion particles, a lot of things, environmental dust, construction dusts, airborne particulates. It's designed to operate at a standard flow rate of 15 liters per minute. Pump calibration should be conducted prior to the start of the sampling protocol. And the way to do it is, it's labeled. This is the top, this is the bottom. It says bottom here, it says peel here. So you remove the bottom quality seal from the cassette, and you retain it. So you can rip it off there, and you could just put it on the side. So that's open. And then you attach your tube, your vacuum supply, to the bottom of the cassette. Fits directly onto it. No adapters needed. Then you place your cassette in the area with your tripod and set it up to the tripod, and you place it wherever you want to be. Let's say you are in the house, in the living room, and so you set it up there, and then you remove the top seal. So there's a little arrow that says remove here or peel here. So remove this quality seal. Let's see if I can get it off here. And you retain it as well. I like to keep them in the back, away from the airflow. And there's the slit. So the air is going to go right into there and get collected on the inside. and it's going to travel through the cassette and into the tube to your pump. So you opened it up, it's on your tripod, it's hooked up to the pump, and you turn on your calibrated vacuum source and conduct the sampling according to the sampling procedures. And then when you're done, you turn off the pump and you replace the seals. So that's the bottom, this is the top. So you replace it to the top of the cassette, and you've got to orient it so it's nice and sealed. And then you remove the bottom tube from the vacuum source, and then you replace the seal on the bottom here, like that. This is the bottom. And then you document the sample location and the cassette serial number. There's the serial number there. Put that in your chain of custody and in your work log, and store appropriately, and you're ready to ship it. The Allergenco D is designed to operate at a standard flow rate of 15 liters per minute. Now, an outdoor sample is 10 minutes. A dust-free environment, like a clean office, you could go for 5 to 8 minutes. An indoor environment, you can even go down to 5 minutes. It's your judgment call. If there's a lot of dust or cleaning involved, oh, there's the expiration date. So you always have to note that. Make sure you're not beyond that. They last about a year, then you just throw them away. And let's see, if there's a lot of excessive dust and cleaning or sweeping going on the inside, we can go down to 1 to 3 minutes. And inner wall sampling is about 5 minutes. And you store these between 50 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and don't use these in temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the Micro 5 PosiTrack. Air sampling pumps should be at a flow rate of 5 liters per minute through this cassette, and at the breathing height, again, 3 to 6 feet. Around 5 feet is good. And to do it, you remove the cap from the bottom. To know where the bottom is, that you've got the air flows. So this is the bottom of the unit. So we move the cap from the bottom. You have to retain this cap because you're going to recap it. So let's put it down somewhere safely, and don't get it dirty. Simply connect one end of the tube, and it has to be 5 feet or less. You can't have a tube that's longer than 5 feet, to the bottom of the cassette. No adapters are necessary. You put this in the tripod. Your tube's probably already through the top of the tripod. You're in the area of sampling. Say you're in a room that's musty and you don't see any visible mold. So you're all set to go and turn on the unit. You peel back the 2x quality seal and attach it temporarily to the side of the cassette during sampling. I like to attach it to the back. Air is going to go in there through the sampling unit and out to your pump source. Record the time that you turn on the pump, and sample for 5 minutes, or depending on the environment. Outdoor samples, 5 minutes. Clean indoor environments, 5 minutes. Normal activity indoors, 5 minutes. Indoor, let's say there's heavy particulates, there's something going on, some dust, you're kind of concerned about too much stuff going inside, you can go down to 3 minutes. An inner wall sampling could be 1 to 5 minutes. Turn the pump on, 5 minutes, let's say, and then when sampling is complete, turn the pump off, record your notes, replace the cap. Actually, I like to replace the cap and then make my recording on my work log and chain of custody. Get it a nice good seal. Then make your field notes in the areas of your work log and chain of custody. pull the bottom off, your air pump source, replace the cap that we saved, that's on the bottom. You can make notes here. There's a very large area to make notes, location, ID, and then you're ready to go. Store it in an area 50 to 80 degrees, and do not use it in temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It will be useless. The Micro 5, it utilizes a 360 degree impaction chamber inside. It collects aeroallergens such as pollens, mold and fungal spores, fibers, dander, insects, components, parts, other airborne contaminants. It's designed to operate at a flow rate of 5 liters per minute. So to work it, you simply remove the pin from the back, from the bottom. This is the bottom. Before I do that, let's confirm. We've got the airflow arrow. The top, air's coming in, airflow is going down through. Remove the pin. Connect one end of your tube. No adapters necessary. The tube can't be greater than 5 feet. It's in your tripod at breathing height, about 5 feet, 3 to 6 feet. And it's in your location where you're going to sample. You're going to sample it according to the protocols. You peel back this sticky quality sticker here. I like to put it on the edge behind. Now you're ready to go. This is the airflow direction. It's going to go in to the impaction, coming out through the tube to your pump. Turn on the pump, sample for 5 minutes, or depending on the environment, let's say 10 minutes outside, 8 to 10 minutes outside, recommended by the manufacturer. Indoor with normal activity, 5 minutes. Indoor with heavy particulates, like someone's cleaning or dusting, maybe 1 to 3 minutes. When the sampling is completed, turn off the pump, replace, like that. Make sure there's a good seal. It's really this area here. It's not the perimeter. It's just this area in here that you want sealed up. And then disconnect from your air pump source. You've got your pin in a nice clean location. Just going to replace it. Put it back in there. And then you record your field notes in your work ledger book, log book, and in the chain of custody. And the notes would include any serial numbers, any expiration dates, time, location, the number of minutes, calibration, and then send the microcassette to the laboratory for analysis. And in the meantime, you have to store it in a temperature range of 50 to 80 degrees. No cooler. Do not use this. Do not sample with this device when the air temperature is below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's the Micro 5.